I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, but Andrew Kuo does not take days off. Mr. Andrew Kuo, what is going on today?
I'm doing amazing, man. I'm just sitting here, redefining relegation, jamming this new song, maybe new old song, Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo, man. Have you heard this tender cut?
Well, this may be a little bit meta for our dear listeners, but I saw you tweet about it on Twitter.com. I then went to Spotify to listen to the song that you were tweeting about, and now you're here asking me about it on Cookies. So it's really full circle for me. So you are both responsible for me listening to it, and then now you have asked me to comment on it based on what you've already done. It's like the plot to Back to the Future.
Do I have to apologize? Do I have to apologize for bullying you and stealing the sports results book that makes me rich?
Yes, I feel gaslit. I feel very manipulated here.
Oh, sort of like the songs manipulating your emotions.
You laid a trap for me on Twitter and then pulled the stick out and the box fell on me right at the beginning of Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast.
And then I had you tweeting and creating T-shirts for Gruel. Cool. Yes, I have listened to it because you forced me to listen to it. I'm sorry,
several
man.
days ago.
I'm sorry.
I don't get it. It seems like a ballad. Celine Dion,
Weird.
Titanic. Someone
Weird.
on the bow of a ship as waves go crashing. A ballad.
Respect. Like the Celine Dion reference gets me psyched because I'm a huge Titanic boy. Love that film.
You are a Titanic boy.
I mean, who isn't? That movie is amazing, man.
I've
there's
never seen
highs, there's lows. Wait, all right. You've never seen Titanic?
No, never seen it.
Why? Is this like a thing or is this random?
No, not seeing movies like Titanic or Avatar, which I have also not seen.
Same director.
It feels like a thing, but it's not a thing. I just haven't. Once you haven't watched it for years, I guess there's a point where you say, all right, now it's intentional. You're just trying not to watch Titanic. But I swear to you, that is not the case.
You should watch it. It's one of the greatest fucking movies, man. There's highs, there's lows, there's Draw Me Like Your French Girls, there's a ship splitting in half as it sinks. It's awesome. Half of it is just like,
I've seen some clips here and there, flipping through channels, and I've never stopped and watched the movie in its entirety. My understanding is that it's long.
Yeah, there's a lot of Billy Zane, man, and that really extends it by a good hour. But it's a very worthwhile Zaneage, as they say.
You are such a Titanic boy.
I love Titanic. Are you kidding me? That is my favorite genre of thrift store clothing, the Titanic genre. All those tees are awesome, man.
Game blouses.
I mean, it's. Are you saying Titanic is sus?
No. How could it be sus? It's about a boat. Boats are incredibly manly.
And also this song, Driver's License, is also manly.
Is it?
Nah, but I
Walk that one back really fast.
I wouldn't call it. Well, I think so. I don't think it's Celine Dion. It doesn't have roots in Celine Dion. It's like immediately it has like a vibe of like Phoebe Bridgers or. I love all that Lilith Fair stuff, like Sarah McLachlan's like one of my. I liked her albums, but this singer-songwriter stuff is like, I don't know. This is nothing new, but
right. Does this fall under the same category as like Adele's ballads?
No, absolutely not to me.
Jesus.
To me personally. So even though this has been totally manufactured, Olivia Rodrigo is, I believe, like High School Musical. Has a High School
Is she an
Musical
industry
pedigree.
plant?
She might not be a plant. She is just the industry.
Okay.
And sort of like Lil Wayne is music, Olivia Rodrigo is industry. Sort of like I am Doggy Coin, but we can get to that later.
Nas is the street dream.
Right. But to me, this song reminds me of all that emo stuff I was into, like Dashboard Confessional, Captain Jazz, Rites of Spring, all this stuff that like I grew up listening to as a young wee lad, rooting for the Knicks and rooting for like Discord Records, right? And so hearing this song made me very pleased because it was to me a little bit of a throwback, kind of a Zion Williamson.
How many times have you, the Titanic boy, listened to driver's license?
Oh, and I'm not even trying to be weird, but probably like in the 20s, 30s. This is a song you just have on repeat, but I do this all the time. I find a jam I like when Haim came out, I played that song like just on repeat for like 20 minutes at a time. Just really enjoyed it. I like hits, baby.
So you're listening to Driver's License on repeat, and I'm driving around listening to Capone and Noriega, Driver's Seat.
Wait, what did you admit that you drove to? I'm not talking adult dad jazz. You were admitted to driving around to...
Oh, certain Mobb Deep songs.
That's right.
Generally not albums, just specific ones that really are cultivated for driving around.
Amazing. I mean, in a way, Olivia Rodrigo is my Mobb Deep. And
many people
have said this. The streets are saying. I love that damn song, man. It's a burner.
I listen to it. I'm going to be frank, as I always say.
Be frank, man.
I'm going to keep the defense honest. Mm-hmm. I probably listened to it for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
I'll give it another whirl. I'll give it a fat chance.
I would also recommend giving Titanic a fat chance.
Yeah, but it's hard to know if that's really something to take seriously when it's coming from a Titanic boy.
Oh, I'm a Titanic boy. Titanic boys, hit me up. We can talk some Titanic. Billy Zane, man, hilarious. I'm with a child.
In other pop music news, your guy Little Uzi Vert has apparently put like a $20 million diamond in $24 million.
That's what rumors say.
Rumors.
I also have a baseball card collection worth $24 million. Someone hit me up.
Has put this diamond, I guess it's a piercing embedded. Maybe it's on a ring. It's hard to tell exactly, but in his forehead. The immediate concern seems to be that he'll be robbed and someone will rip it out and he'll die. But that doesn't really, I don't think that'll happen.
It's not like next to his brain. Like there's a skull there. He might, he tweeted like it started bleeding, obviously, because it's very tenderoni on your forehead, and rocks are not tenderoni, so it's a weird combo. But he's like, I could die, and I'm like, yeah, I doubt it, because it's not drilled into your forehead, so a chunk of your forehead might not come off. Your face might peel off, but that will be temporary.
Yeah, but he's trying to turn into a literal diamond.
I love it. So this is what I thought Driver's License would be, like a diamond on like something new. Instead, it was old. But Lil Uzi Vert comes out and is just like, "Oh, you guys have seen like people gluing diamonds with Gorilla Glue onto their faces, onto their head zones. I'm just gonna have it permanently attached, and my diamond's worth more than yours."
I mean, I get the concern, I guess, about a snatching. I don't know if he's ever in that sort of vulnerable state, but in the rap world, like the chain snatching has always been a thing. Whether it's to even hold that product or just to immediately sell it back or to put it on social media as like a token of one-upsmanship. I don't think anyone's going to be able to wrest a $24 million diamond out of his forehead.
It's really convenient that he's doing this when we can't convene and celebrate music together as a group, because he has no real risk of theft here. But I hear what you're saying. It's like,
Yeah, like, is he going to wear this when he goes crowd surfing? I think not.
is attaching a valuable rock to your forehead a bit?
It's definitely a bit.
Yeah, it's a bit, but it reminds me of, like, the suitcase with the handcuffs. It's like, we're gonna have to take your hand. He's like, dog, it's my forehead. It's like, you'll be fine. You have your other forehead.
He's going to feel so burned when someone decapitates him just to make off with the diamond, and then shows his head with the diamond on a chain.
I could see that awkward 1.5 seconds where he still has consciousness, where he's like, damn, I got burned, son.
Bad idea. Come on.
Bad on me, dudes.
I should have seen this coming.
I think it's pretty cool. I don't know. I don't understand Little Uzi Vert as much as I'd like to think I do. My question is, do Zoomers also think he's weird?
I think there's a threshold of weirdness when you want to attach an alleged $24 million diamond to your forehead. I think everyone looks at that and says, that's abnormal.
But a very traditional move, right? Like, people have been putting, like, Madonna did this. She put, like, a ruby on her forehead, right? So this look is just whatever. Lil Uzi Vert being a biohacker is nothing new, right?
I mean, this is a guy who has accessorized his body in many ways already.
Yeah. The story here is how much the rock is worth.
That is more interesting to me than the statement, right? Mm-hmm. I believe that Little Uzi Vert has a lot of money, but
24 is a lot.
$24 million?
Liquid, on not only liquid, literally on your face. It's not like in your bank account. You cannot, like, just pay someone $24 million. It's sitting there on your face.
I guess that's what I'm thinking is, okay, so how much money does Lil Uzi Vert have? Is this a quarter of his wealth? Does he have $500 million? Because that doesn't sound right to me.
I'm going to my favorite website in the world, Celebrity Net Worth.
Those always seem so worthless.
I visit this site like maybe twice a day, to be honest. If I can be honest about how many times I visit this site, maybe 2.
They have 40,000 Instagram followers, therefore they're worth $2.2 million.
It makes there's a swing of like 70% of their estimate above and below. But it says here 16 million, which is not close to 24, man. Let's be real.
It says 16.
16, 16.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a lot of money. I mean, shout out to Lil Uzi Vert, who, in my opinion, is one of the greatest rappers ever. And not to be one of those dudes, I rank him like right there with Nas and the greats and stuff. I think Lil Uzi Vert has done his damn thing.
I'm a Lil Uzi Vert fan. I find those kind of rankings always so weird.
I know.
It's like they represent totally different things.
Yeah, but it just articulates
that you think he's
the
awesome.
the respect I put on his name.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, yeah.
He's also been very successful for a long time now.
Yeah, yeah. He's an elder statesman now.
The older gods, such as Lil Uzi Vert or Chief Keef.
I grew up listening to 6ix9ine. I'm like, huh? I'm gonna crawl back in my fucking cave.
But that's why the 24 million doesn't make sense to me, because if you said Lil Uzi Vert has 30 million bucks, I'd say that sounds about right. He's earned a lot of money. He's had a lot of tour dates before things shut down. He's had commercials. His streams go crazy. He sold a lot of albums, I guess. Sure. That makes sense. Sold his publishing. Yeah. And he's used all of that on this diamond. That's why. So he has a diamond that's worth more than his net worth? Is that what we're doing?
I love the diamond industry. Did you hear this story like back in the day? You know, when Obi Toppin was dunking and there was prohibition. I think even before that, De Beers tried to manufacture the price of diamonds by dumping the diamond stock into the middle of the ocean. Like, diamonds are not that rare. You can get diamonds, but in order to control the market, De Beers like control the inventory as you do with everything, right? And so therefore diamonds are valuable, but as things on Earth, they're not as rare as we may think. And this rock, it just reminds me of basketball cards, man. It's just like, well, I think this Michael Jordan rookie is worth $10,000. It's like, okay, who's willing to give me $9,000 for this? Do I hear $8,000? Do I hear? It's like a reverse kind of auction.
Yeah, I've noticed that baseball cards and I guess basketball cards and sports card memorabilia has been on the uptick. I thought the Ringer started a pod on, I believe, baseball cards.
Is it only baseball, like Boston Celtics or Boston Red Sox baseball cards?
Ooh, a Bill Buckner. That's really expensive.
Wow, this Oil Can Boyd card has expanded by 2 inches. Pause.
It's grown in the off season, yeah.
But all the shenanigans the art market has been pulling for the last 30 years have kind of like become easier to talk about with Doggy Coin and GameStop and sports cards. It's just like all this stuff has been going on at like Sotheby's and Phillips and Christie's forever. Like manufacturing the cost of artists or old paintings is just like a mechanism you can trigger. So yeah, the cards
is
are
this
making
baseball card zombie formalism.
I've tried to like make this bit work. Like I just try to put zombie formalism into everything.
I know.
And it works. So I'm claiming yes.
I remember when we were growing up, the only cards that had real value fell into basically 2 categories. You had like the Honus Wagners, the uber rare, really expensive cards from like the 1950s,
Yeah.
1940s, 1920, whatever. Just like basically antiques.
Back when Buddy Hield and Obi Toppin were collecting cards and, kicking cans down the street.
It was like, let me get that Mickey Mantle. And then you had error cards, which were at
Billy
first
Ripkeys.
probably real errors and then intentionally done to generate scarcity. And when I look at cards now, because I just Googled quickly to understand what was happening, even though I don't have any particular interest in it, and it would be like Zion Williamson card, $10,000. So what's happening? Is it forced scarcity? Is that the whole deal with like the modern card racket?
I hesitate to call it a racket because our whole society is based off of forced scarcity. Like we all, not to get too dark and not to get there, but like we all think like there's a soulmate. I mean, there's many soulmates out there for you, to be honest. Sticking to one.
And they're all at Clandestino.
They're all at Dime Square and they're all dimes. There's many dimes. Which dime is yours?
They're all outside the roast beef store. They're all.
Is there a roast beef
coffees.
store? Are you talking about the sandwich slanging spot?
Yeah. The roast beef store.
Hey, if you're going to the roast beef store, can you pick me up a roast beef?
2 roast beefs, please.
I'll take 2, sir. Only if you're going to the roast beef store.
I feel like the name starts with R, which is what really makes it feel like it's a roast beef store.
Oh, Regina's? Is that
Yeah,
what
the
you're
roast
thinking?
beef store.
Sandwiches are not cheap. And we'll get back to baseball cards and sports cards. But, you mess around at Regina's and you're walking away with an $18 sandwich.
And is that sandwich too large?
All sandwiches, 95, I forget the exact number, but it went up. It's gone up. So I'm going 97% of sandwiches are too big.
Yeah, that makes sense.
3%
Anyway.
are not. 3%
Anyway,
are not.
that is the roast beef store.
Yeah. So scarcity. I think, so basically the card market saw the explosion and how that explosion of like the upper decks, the Fleers. Let me
But didn't
put a
that all
disclaimer on
happen
this.
like 30 years ago, though, right?
It takes time, man. I mean, it was dead in the water The Upper Deck Griffey Jr. No Sin Bin destroyed the market because people thought it was along the lines of the scarcity of cards before 1986, like the 85 cards, 84 cards, Wade Boggs, that stuff, No Sin Bin. And it wasn't. They had produced gazillions of this card, and even at its peak value back in the day, I think it was like $18, which was a lot.
I remember it being around 100.
I think, yeah, I don't remember it that high at the time, but
I have one signed.
Oh, now it's not worth anything because it's signed.
I know.
Why would you get it signed? Like, all these rules are art rules, right? It's like, well, what's the provenance? What era is it the blue period or whatever? And I think, is it a signature piece? And the signature has to be authenticated, and a lot of people don't want that because there's too much controversy around. Are you biohacking the card? Are you card hacking?
Right. I've seen these scandals where people would artificially trim the sides down to turn it back into a mint card and things like that. I do remember Ken Griffey Jr. Signing the card. I was there. I paid my parents paid $35 for me to go and get Ken
To
Griffey
ruin
Jr.'s
a card.
signature, so he could ruin it.
Yeah.
And I do remember him being exceptionally bored and being stunned. Why was he so bored? Why? I waited in a line to see this guy, and he barely lifted his eyes. He just signed it. What a monster!
Yeah, that's big money. OJ only went to jail because of signing autographs and the value of that product. That's the only reason he went to jail.
But it was just a good lesson as a child in what is a big moment to you means nothing to other people.
I mean, the only thing cards taught me was that what I think is important, no one thinks is important. I spent hours, maybe weeks, carefully organizing the stack of Knicks players that I think are going to be worth more next season. And then you bring it to the card shop and they're like, we can't take those because we can't sell them. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
There's these cultural moments from back then, and this is, of course, in Rochester, New York, where Ken Griffey Jr. would never be there normally. But it's like, Ken Griffey Jr. is coming into town, and he's going to sign some autographs. And you're like, wow.
What a drag for Ken Griffey Jr.
That's what I was going to say. It's like this, I don't know if they still do that today. I mean, it may be so lucrative that you do, but what a bizarre thing for Ken Griffey Jr., an iconic baseball player at the time, to kind of drag his ass from, mid-sized city to smaller mid-sized city, sitting around signing autographs. Sure, lucrative. Yes. But what an odd kind of drudgery to insert into your life as Ken Griffey Jr.
And it's so weird that you go all that way to get to Rochester to sign hundreds, maybe thousands of autographs, and you get paid in garbage plates. It's like, how much garbage can you eat?
Okay, here is your tanker of Genesee beer. Where do you want us to drive it?
What, you don't like cream ale all of a sudden? Hey, we threw on a couple extra hot dogs on for you. Extra gravy, Ken.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, that's our currency here. All transactions take place via garbage plate. Just bartering garbage plates.
Is it
left and right.
gravy crypto? So back to the cards and crypto.
Yeah.
The cards, I think, are legit. They're beautiful. Some of them are 101, 1 of 3, and the design you're talking about, some of them are trying to be sold for like $800,000, but it's a one card thing. The card is the same design, but it's got a different flash to it. Whatever. It's a painting, right? Like, why is this painting worth $10 million as opposed to $9 million? It's like, well, it's just the one people want. It's like, but it looks the same. It's like, yeah, it's got a different line on it.
Is this just sort of a nostalgic throwback to people who are in their late 30s and early 40s and 50s who really liked baseball cards as a kid and now trying to pretend that they were important and rejiggering them as an actual investment because everyone feels kind of silly for caring about them so much when they were a child?
I think it's real, and I don't think there's any silliness. I mean, it's silly because they're cards, but a painting's silly. And money is silly, right? And so if we're all on the low And you're right. It's people with money now, 30s, 40s, 50s, who have these memories that we do. But if we are in the back of our minds laughing at something like Bitcoin and Doggy Coin, which is amazing, I'm rich. If we're laughing at that stuff and we are processing it in the back of our minds, what we're doing here is just like creating a form of currency, which is like the most natural human thing to do. And I don't think people are losing money. Some people will lose a ton of money with this boom of like sports card stuff. Like John Morant's are going for like 20 grand. It's wild. But a lot of people are making a living off of this. And then I want to bring up this Top Shot thing that the NBA had started, not to bore our current events listeners. But basically the NBA is starting a thing where you can buy moments, like a player dunks a ball. You can purchase this moment if it's a platinum moment, which they decide to label for scarcity, for $10,000. Bidding starts now. So it's like a Dennis Smith Jr. dunk and steal, whatever. You own that moment for $10,000 and no one else can have it. But there's a bidding process online. So, hey, if someone wants to pay 20, you're out of luck. They're trying to create currency because then you get paid in like NBA coins where you can like exchange them for other moments and then eventually products and games, and you get to spend NBA coins for NBA products. I don't know why any huge company wouldn't try to start this now. It's like credit.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, is this just, late stage capitalism compartmentalized that
It's
every
just
hobby,
capitalism.
That's what I mean. But it's, even applicable to, that's a hobby. All right, we have to turn it into a side hustle. It can't just be a hobby. You can't just like cards. It has to be an investment. It has to be a opportunity to somehow get rich or accrue value. It can't just be that you think John Morant's a cool player and you want to own a little memento.
Well, this comes back to driver's license, right? Because I weirdly,
Titanic boys.
I don't think this GameStop thing or Doggy Coin thing is. I find it to be kind of like emotional, because what these people are doing, this like subculture, these cretins, right, on Reddit, what they're trying to do is trying to do something ethical and trying to do. Well, you just hate money in general, but what they're trying to do is what you actually are asking for the world to do. Unfortunately, someone's going to have to get rich, and people don't like that. But like,
I'm more cynical about
for sure.
the pump and dumpers of Reddit than
There is no dumping though; it's just pumping. So
the people who made their money dumped. There are true believers, sure, but I
yeah,
mean, this
that's
is
not what I'm talking about.
I'm saying the Reddit thing being framed as a pro uprising, good marketing for like a phenomenally successful pump and dump scam.
I kind of am not. I don't have the same cynicism. I see where that comes from, but if you had dumped it, you're just taking advantage of the system, and you're just behaving like the hedge funds, which is fine.
That's almost certainly what the vast majority of those guys did. They got in. They got in early. They made a shit ton of money, and they sold when it was high. Are there people who were like up $30 million and ended up getting, a couple 100,000? Sure. There were people who.
I mean, the guy who started it is not selling and is not budging. There's stories of people who like off of Bitcoin became millionaires off of like a $10,000 investment, and they're just like, we're not going to sell because this is just starting, and like this money is abstract to me anyway because I never had it.
I think there are those kind of people in this mix. I'm saying to me the GameStop, AMC, the framing of that as a way to screw Wall Street and the hedge funds was a very convenient way to create an enemy and to bolster support and make it something that was about the people and democracy versus it just being what they've been doing all along.
But those people who started that, Wall Street bets and stuff, they started from zero singing this tune for years. So I don't know where the marketing comes in. Like, when I'm born, I'm just marketing, right? Like, oh, what are you? And just like a Chinese dude.
Well,
But,
I mean,
like,
this one particularly became a phenomenon because they had an enemy. They had, Melvin Finance, Melvin Partners, whatever it was called, as like, there's the man, here's us. It's us versus them.
That's
versus,
not quite how it went down, though. From what I understand is they had been joking around, playing around about this in chat rooms for years, and then finally they identified something that frustrated them. And the guy has been pushing GameStop for years, and he bought in years ago. And he was like, "I believe in this company. I think they're gonna do what Netflix did." And guys believe in what GameStop is trying to do, buy them for years, 2 or 3, right? Now there's like he sold his movie rights, but and then when he saw this go down, someone shorting it, he was like, well, this is my personal fight now. So everybody, let's just fuck him over. And it did and did not work, right? But the idea was like Big Baller Brand. That's easy to clown Big Baller Brand. It's very easy to clown the Ball family. But I love what they did. They just didn't have the talent. Like, their idea was good. The shoes were not, and their marketing was not. But someone is going to do that very soon and in a more successful way.
I mean, to me, this was wildly successful in terms of doing what it was supposed to do, which was make money for people who put in money early. And to me, that's when I say I'm cynical about it. I'm not saying there wasn't someone who had this grand plan or this vision, like the guy who started it, to go after this particular hedge fund or to help GameStop, whatever his agenda was. The reason this worked was, again, it was a pump and dump. Like I've checked into, other variants of this that are on like Discord, and they do this shit every day. Every day. Here's a new coin. Here's a new stock. Pump it. Push it on socials. Get it out there. Oh, it's moving. It's moving. Like they do it every single day.
I mean,
and these are the same people, with the exclusion of like that individual you're talking about.
I mean, we kind of run into a wall because I just like. So I hear driver's license, and in 5 seconds, I'm like, oh, this is exactly for me. And you hear it, and you're like, not really. And I think we can see something like Titanic or GameStop and see completely 2 different things. And that's just a spice of life, baby.
It sure is. It sure is. Speaking of spices, your man Andrew Yang put up a photo. The caption, chicken soup. There was a bowl that included broth and some pieces of chicken. Was there any spice of life or otherwise in that broth?
Oh, there was spice, man. And the spice was some fire comedy. Andrew Yang, are we wasting his talents on UBI, legislation, helping people's lives, yada, yada, yada? Should he just be a comedian? Or
is it all a bit?
Oh, it's a bit. And
is he running for mayor as a bit?
He is not running for mayor as a bit. He's unveiling the biddiness of it all. Oh, but that picture is amazing. He put it up there as bait, right? Like, this is the most disgusting looking soup I've seen in a while.
This is
it had a
why.
nice yellow color,
The
soup
broth
itself
looked fine, a
good.
nice coat, a nice sheen of chicken fat on the surface. Fine.
I would cop. No doubt. Cop o'clock.
It did look to me as if he had made kind of a flavorless broth.
It's hard to tell if it has flavor or not. It looks very flavorful to me, but it's just bright yellow. Some yellow number 5 action.
Well, I mean, maybe he made broth at home. You throw some chicken in there.
Or his wife, because he's in quarantine.
Or his wife, right?
Yeah.
And there's other vegetables, and then you would, pour it through a cheesecloth or whatever to get rid of the small particles.
Oh, look at
clear
you.
broth, and then he put the chicken back in. Maybe that's what we saw.
Yeah, and I only say his wife because I think before that he was like shouting out that she was taking care of him. And that would be a logical next tweet, right? Like, look, I have this homemade chicken soup. And he's having a piss, man. He's doing like, he should, the show that closest resembles what he's doing would be The Office. It's like, is Michael Scott this dumb? No. Is he doing a thing? Maybe. I don't know. But
It's funny you say that because so many times in his kind of quest for New York authenticity, which again borders on trolliness,
oh, it's
they've
fully
used
trolly.
they've used that Michael Scott going to Sparrow. Like that's like
I love it.
the comparison has been used so many times to Yang, like New York pizza, and then Michael Scott like dashing through Times Square.
Which is one of the best memes generated from that show. I love that one. But okay, so he starts with his whole Knicks thing, like a year ago. So check, Knicks nerds, okay, real New York hip hop, got it. And then he goes to a bodega. He doesn't know how to buy banana. What?
But again,
New
he
Yorker
goes
doesn't?
to like a non-bodega. It's all so meta. I can't tell if he's trolling or not. Like he's a smart guy, or is he oblivious to some of these specific things? It's really well done. I can't tell either way. He knows that's not a fucking bodega. He knows that's a little grocery store that no one would consider a bodega. He knows how to buy bananas, and yet, the whole thing turns into a calamity.
I don't know why it's confusing. He's mocking our chopped cheese debates, right?
He could be. I think that's a valid read of this. Or he's exactly the same kind of person who would show up when he's back from his quar holding a chopped cheese and being like, a Harlem delicacy. And like,
Oh, he's gonna do that, and it's gonna be hilarious.
and like, I still won't know if he's genuine or not. He's not keeping the defense honest.
To me,
No, he is keeping the defense honest.
yeah. To me, it's a win-win because posting a crappy picture of chicken soup is like signaling that, like, hey, I'm not fancy. I'm one of you guys, and everyone's just like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, get off your high horse, Mr. Campbell.
Oh, you like ingredients? Couldn't be me.
Oh, you chop the chicken? In your ivory tower?
You just don't have one random chicken back floating in your bowl. Okay, okay, East Coast elite.
And I was doing that core thing where I was like checking out everything else in the picture. And like he's sitting at the corner of a weird plastic table with a bunch of other crap on it. I'm like, how long ago were we arguing that he was like too rich to live in a 2-bedroom apartment? Now he's eating that damn chicken soup.
I mean, the New York Post, I think, someone tried to nail him again for,
sure.
a comment that he made. I think it was a few months back, but it was recorded saying, like, I wanted to get out of New York or something like that. And they're like, got him again. This time he won't survive. And it was like Yang just talking shit again.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't say I'm trying to get out of New York? Everyone says that.
I think the cherry on top, and I'm giving this maybe a month, is when he posts the Empire State of Mind video on his Twitter account, and people are like, he's the mayor for us, and he's just like giggling at his computer.
I think it was our buddy Lucas Tyson put up a tweet saying, New York Nico for Andrew Yang's campaign manager. I'm like, he's kind of already doing that.
But
He's so close to being like outside of Saigon Banh Mi. Like, we're heading down to Dime Square to get like.
But
it's
this,
like, I don't know.
Isn't this like, I'm not a Fran Lebowitz fan. Respect to that generation. Respect to whatever she does. She's been a big part of the city for a long time, and I love the city and I respect her. But I don't like her life view. It doesn't align with mine. Yang is kind of doing the Fran Lebowitz bit, but like turned around and funnier. It's sort of like, you guys get this. So are we going to have fun or not? It's like you have a choice. We can have fun with this or we can not have fun with this. And if you guys don't have fun with this, some of us may be able to glean some giggles.
It's really well done in that we could be giving him way too much credit or not enough credit. It's impossible to say. St. John's University, the Red Storm had a nice win in college basketball. And his response was, I remember loving St. John when they had Ron Artest and like Eric Barkley or whatever his name was, and mentioning, the team from 20 years ago. And everyone's like, boo, hiss. You're doing I'm like, I can't tell. Like, of course he's being clumsy and pandering.
Yeah.
Does he know he's being clumsy and pandering and that's why it's funny? I don't know. It's just well done overall.
I think it's excellent. You know, he's dropped Depeche Mode kind of tweets, being like, I saw
loves
them
the
recently.
Just loves the 1997 St. John team.
I mean, Chris Mullin day ones are just like, I don't think so, Andrew Yang.
All right, Malik Sealy's.
Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
Felipe Lopez, right?
The God.
I miss St. John. I miss the Big East, man. But anyway, Andrew Yang is obviously.
I went to the last Cuse Georgetown game while they were still in the Big East. In the Garden.
Can you name some players?
That was awesome. Otto Porter is the.
He was fun.
He's the only NBA.
Product
There may be
from
some
those
other
two
guys
teams.
who were on that Syracuse team. I can't remember exactly, what year, but Otto Porter was the best player on Georgetown.
I say I miss the Big East, but I really miss my childhood because you can burn the NCAA for all I care.
Yeah, I don't
get
care
rid
about
of
the NCAA at all, but
Yeah.
I do miss the Big East. But to your point, it's baseball card collecting.
Yeah, I just miss Othello Harrington controlling the paint for my Georgetown Hoyas. Georgetown Hoyas day one stand up.
Yeah, the Georgetown center conveyor belt. Alonzo, Ewing, Mutombo, Othello Harrington,
Mike
Don Reed.
Sweetney. Was Sweetney a Hoya? I believe so. I forget.
I forget.
Nick's legend.
Don Reed was. Remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, yes, Yang's definitely doing a thing.
And I think it's funny, and I don't even think it's that hard to understand. At a certain point, we can only argue so much about bodegas. Like, it just kind of runs out a little bit. So, and, I love beating a bad joke to death when it becomes funny again. So let's do this.
Speaking of someone else doing a bit, your girl Marjorie Taylor Greene has been really in the news for her beliefs.
So the
She was
Miami
forced
Heat.
to she didn't really denounce them. She was supposed to denounce her beliefs, and she kind of
Oh, I watched that.
finessed it,
Yeah.
and they removed her from her committees.
Yeah. If our listeners did not see that press conference, she said the Miami Heat were a result of a secret space laser shot into South Beach.
Is that appropriating tall culture?
Secret space lasers?
Yeah,
How is that tall culture?
because space is tall. Like, comes from above.
Yeah, but lasers are so tiny. I guess they could be big.
Space lasers are huge.
They don't.
A
They don't-
tiny
they don't have
space
to be.
laser?
They don't have to be huge.
All right, fine. Anyway, are you concerned about this, mad woman?
I don't know. I don't know how if you believe in the idea of giving something oxygen, and we talk about, I don't even know what that means. You would have to define it first. I don't know if we're undervaluing this conflict or overvaluing it. They took her off some committees, the education committee, because she said some school shootings were not real, which it was really surreal to see her in our capital being like, okay, 9/11 was real.
So weird, dude. So weird.
I was like, yo.
I
I was dumbfounded a little bit. I was like, not to be like the whole like dystopian dude, but I was like, okay, if we pull back a foot and see what we're watching, we just had a congresswoman admit that she's like, fine, these school shootings were real. I admit it. Fine, you got me there. I'm like,
was her
this is some
suggestion, or at least her, I guess, defense of this 9/11 theory, was that it was done by the U.S. government, or that it actually happened at all? Like, where was her alleged belief that she is renouncing by saying that it existed and happened? Was it like
Yeah.
a false flag thing? Is she implying the buildings didn't blow up? I mean, I'm just trying to be clear here. Is this like a steel beams don't melt type of deal?
it's really weird when some people are like, COVID isn't real, and someone's like, hey, my husband died of it yesterday. And they're like, yeah, you're just getting paid to say that. I'm like, well, if the buildings aren't there anymore, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, oh, the buildings were never there. I'm like, yo, man, put that rock on your forehead because you're existing on a different plane than us. And I don't know where her stance specifically comes with 9/11.
Yeah, I don't think it seems like she would probably fall under like the controlled demolition wing
Yes.
of theorizing.
Yeah, and we get to an annoying backwards thing of like arguing about language. It's like, you know, we spent a good 2 weeks trying to figure out what there was, or quid pro quo, and we weren't actually talking about anything. So, you know, it's easy. We're all debate club masters now, right? So all someone has to do is be like, okay, I know the buildings aren't there anymore, but a hoax is not what you think a hoax is. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. I'm going to go watch a basketball game.
Well, that's the thing with QAnon, right?
Yeah.
Is that there's so many variants on the vocabulary from which we try to take away its power. It's a conspiracy theory, okay? It's an unfounded conspiracy theory. It's a baseless conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fantasy is what it is. And all these things that remove it from being real. But there's kind of a problem with that too, because once it becomes this completely fictional idea, then it doesn't become harmful, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're like, yeah, she has some belief in this thing that's just a total fantasy that is like implausible, that like, all right, whatever. I can't even take that seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, QAnon does have its roots in very established theories of anti-Semitism and like white replacement and all these ideas, white genocide, that have been around forever. And that's part of why it's stuck. And that's part of sort of the lore and mythology of it that does make it dangerous. That when you look at someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, her belief system seems to naturally dovetail with these ideas that are inherent in Q and in the QAnon theology. It's not just a fantasy. I think the Teddy Ruxpin teddy bears are running the government. It's not that.
Shout out to the 80s. Wow.
It's just taken all the way back to Titanic and beyond.
Oh, that was a decade before Titanic.
That was way back. But just this idea that, oh, there's this fantastical nonsense that they believe. That may be true, but it's actually tied to stuff that's been part of like evangelicalism and, you know, the ideologies of the far right forever.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I don't know how to best term these ideas in a way that both describes how nonsensical and bullshit they are, but they are also inherently tied to long-standing traditions that Marjorie Greene is clearly familiar with and embraces.
What helps me in these situations is like a flurry of really simple questions that I think a 5-year-old would come up with. But like, what do you care about? What do you want? What do you believe in? Can you define something before we talk about it? Because if we don't define it, we're just going to be like kind of grabbing onto Jello, you know? Tell me what it is, and then we can go from there. But the genius of someone like Ted Cruz, who's kind of, I regret using that word, but he does a lawyer thing, misdirection, kind of walking back terms. So in the most vile way, you know, I'm paraphrasing, someone might think like something that actually happened in an awful sense in world history, be like, but what is awful and what is history? I'm like, oh, fuck you. You know, like, if we're doing that, then I need to ask you what you want, what you care about, and what you think it is. Because we got nothing.
And I guess just with Marjorie Taylor Greene, her becoming this like cartoonish conspiracy nut, oh, she's crazy, does not really convey who she is. You know, she is someone whose father gave her part of a very, very successful, I believe it's a construction company. Her husband runs it now. They did something like $24 million in business a couple of years back. She is a very wealthy person. She put something like $500,000 of her own money into her campaign. She's a wealthy person with detestable, horrible views. And to make it seem as if she's just someone who believes in, like, you know, fairy tales and like just this, I don't know, almost, oh yeah, she just follows horoscopes, weird conspiracy horoscopes about people like sucking blood in tunnels under buildings. No, she actually has a horrific disgraceful worldview and is really wealthy. She's not like what you think she is.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like her. I have to say the obvious here, but I also don't really hate people who are rich. I mean, we love a lot of people who are rich. So the money thing, like, to me, it's annoying because I'm not rich and she is. But like, whatever. You know, of course she has money. I'm not surprised at all.
Yes, I don't hate her because she's rich. I'm saying she doesn't fall into this category that even people who disagree with her, even people who are horrified by, her, I guess, her subscribing to Q beliefs or advocating for like the murder of Nancy Pelosi or whatever, those kind of, fringe ideas. Oh, she's like a loon from, Georgia and has these crazy things. Like, no, she is emblematic of the kind of people who rush the Capitol, which are business owners, a lot of cops, law enforcement, but they're people with money. It wasn't this like trailer trash idea that I think that the sort of neoliberal media has really foisted upon the sort of the Trump voter and the right wing element to the country as being, trailer trash, and that's just not who they are.
Yeah, I don't see as much of that narrative, but I know what you mean for sure. Maybe just because like I'm not looking for it, but I remember driving when I was a youth. Right after watching Titanic, I drove across America with a couple buddies of mine, and I was in Sturgis during the motorcycle rally, and our immediate observation was there's a great deal of wealth here. Like, everyone has beautiful bicycles, everyone is behaving, everyone's eating and drinking, and we talked to a couple people there, and they're like, yeah, these are all like dentists and lawyers taking time off in the summer. We do this every year. Everyone here has kids in college. Like, this is fun for us. And I'm like, I was expecting some Blues Brothers stuff, like people throwing beer bottles at like cages and stuff with no interns in them. Respect to the interns. But I thought it was going to be a bit rough and tumble, and it was just like not what I expected. And there's a duality, right? Because America is a poor country. And a lot of those poor people have voted, and a lot of those poor people are white too, and they look like the people who stormed the Capitol. And I think it's hard our need to put everything into a container in order to combat it or talk about it or join it overrides the idea that like we're getting like a mix of kind of everything. It's like a weird, it's not a melting pot here situation. It's the MAGA crew is not just one way, because Donald Trump is wealthy. He's not as wealthy as he claims to be, but he has a substantial amount of wealth in his world. And like, we argue about the authenticity of Andrew Yang, but Fox News is right there in Midtown.
Yeah, we've mentioned this on other shows of how many people from the right-wing power structure are from New York City or from Long Island or Westchester.
They're like, down with the coastal elites. I'm going to go to Balthazar.
I mean, it's incredible how many are from this area. Just all of them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you've got some, yokels who filter up because the country's a big place and the Republican Party is large. But if you look at like Fox News and you look at the punditry, I mean, Trump and Giuliani and, the Fox hosts, O'Reilly and Hannity, these guys are all basically like tri-state. It's like they're all from here.
They all get delivery from Balducci's, man.
But yeah, I think just following Trump's victory, the mainstream media, sort of the neoliberal media, made a big deal about defining Trump's America as like counties in West Virginia that voted all for Trump, and saying that's who they are. But we're seeing that it's people like, Betsy DeVos or Loeffler or Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's wealthy people. A lot of them are wealthy.
Yeah. And I think like that makes sense to me because I want my heroes to like aspire up. I want to aspire up to my heroes, and I don't think the ideology kind of supersedes the actuality, and so Marjorie Taylor Greene being a representative, and when Republicans who didn't vote for her removal are like, listen, she was voted in by the people, and we must respect that. In a vacuum, I love that idea. And if it favors the way I think, I'm very into the idea. But that idea has to kind of remain. And we can argue taking her off these committees is not a big deal, in my opinion. But symbolically, it's a very big deal. So I thought it was really interesting what happened. I'm kind of glad she's off, but she doesn't align with my ideology. But I think when people vote her in, those people are real, and I do not underestimate the shit show our country's going through, man. And people have no voice, right?
Well, I mean, it's good to see the Democrats just moving along with, a COVID package, and without any Republicans voting for it, because I think it's pretty clear to me, and it's been clear to me, that the way to go against these kind of ideologies, whether it's QAnon or white nationalism, just the general cesspool of alt-right thought, to me it's like you just give people stuff. Like, me, this has always been the answer: give people health care, give people money, give people their student loan relief, give people child care, just give people stuff. And then what is this ideology going to argue against? Then it doesn't work anymore. But the Democrats always seem very content to do the least while saying, oh my God, can you believe what these people think? They wanted Pelosi to be assassinated. Can you believe it? Decency. You got to vote these guys out. Decency. Let's make this a comic book fight about good versus evil, while the Republicans, of course, do the exact same opposing viewpoint and make it about good versus evil with the roles reversed. Like, just give people stuff. Just give people stuff. It's the easiest thing in the world. If you have the presidency, the House, the Senate, just unload and give people all the shit you can, and the Republicans are doomed. But they won't do it.
And this immediately ties into sports, right? Because this is, I think, a lot of people's criticism of something. Whatever you think the process was, what a rebuild is. Okay, we're willing to put up with procedure for a second, but in the end, give us something. Give us wins, give us joy, give us something. And what Hinkie did only took like 2.5 years. It was really quick, but the people feel like they didn't get anything. And I think I agree with you. I think the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing was annoying to have in the news. It was just very frustrating as we're sitting here, still scared to go outside, still not back at work, still struggling to pay bills, and they're arguing about this knucklehead. And then I was very pleased to see them stay up all night. As I was staring at my window, raving with a cold heart, they were passing bills, and the rest of the world woke up, and I was right there, awake, and the whole night, and they had passed the bill that they had promised, which is just the beginning. And I know there's debate of $1,600 versus $2,000 and what adds up to what, but at least we're going to get that maybe, and then give us more. And you're right. The easiest way to talk to people is to immediately address what they want.
Right, and we've had this analog of the process versus this, politics. But to me, it's like, why are we arguing winning culture versus a losing culture? Just stack draft picks, get us some prospects, open up the salary cap. Like, let's do things that are tangible that you can point at, and then we don't have to debate good versus evil, decency versus indecency. These apocalyptic terms about life changing forever under the other party's, tenure. Mm-hmm. Just give people shit.
I mean, I think I can safely say me and you are fans of like the procedural aspect. We're Eames fans. We're Law and Order day ones. Like, we love a procedural, right? And so, when Knicks fans get frustrated being like, have you guys noticed that Knox is benched? Smokes hasn't played. None of our lottery picks didn't work out. I'm like, you take that risk. You found a couple. Not everything works out, but the fact that they did it, they gave us what we wanted. And it's not wins or losses or a championship, but they gave us exactly what they wanted. But I think me and you love like Ed Bagley Jr. being the secret serial killer, right? Like, see you next week, Ed Bagley, and I think fans of politics would be like, there's so much going on right now. It's like my head is spinning. And people who don't really care about politics, kind of me, are just like, can I just see some results? Do I have money or not? Because I need to get back to work.
Well, this is vaguely reminiscent of the discussions around Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks.
Nice segue. Well done, Ben.
Because the Mavericks did tank. They got their guy.
Did they? They got
traded
their
up.
damn guy.
They used their assets. They got their guy. They got Luka. Then they went and they made a shrewd move to get Kristaps Porzingis.
They preyed on a weak animal and they got Porzingis. Yep.
No one even knew he was on the trading block. For whatever reason, the Knicks just reached out to them instead of seemingly going across the league and getting the best package possible. They went out and said, oh, here's what we want to do. We're going to unload these players, and we want Dennis Smith Jr. We want a couple of picks. That's what we're going to do. And the Mavs said, well, fuck yeah. Hell yes.
Done.
And, last year they had an unbelievable offense. Best in the league. One of the best, maybe the best in history in terms of, points per possession. I believe it was. And
Seth Curry.
They lost in the first round of the playoffs against the Clippers, but they looked good.
They were the bubble heroes. It was the most memorable moment in the bubble, right?
Mm-hmm. And, maybe. One of them.
Sure.
And then Doncic was anointed the next great white hope, the next Larry Legend.
MVP. Vegas had him top 3 MVP candidate.
I believe he was number one from the odds to start out. I think he was. number one in the odds.
In all my fantasy leagues, he went number 2.
Absolutely. And things have not worked out for the Mavericks. So just to quickly update people who have not been paying attention to Dallas, they are 9-14. They are third worst in terms of losses in the NBA. They're one of the worst records, but they're really bad in the losing category as well. Anyway, offensive rating is 18, so below average. Defensive rating is 25, sucks. They're not doing anything well. They are the worst shooting team from long range in the NBA this season.
Still.
And thus far, you would have to say they are easily the biggest disappointment in the league. I think they've lost 6 of 7, 7 of 8.
Surprising.
They've been awful. What's happening here, Quo? Can you fix the Mavs? Do you look at them and you say, I can fix her?
No. I have no savior complex at all in my life.
Quo, fix the Mavs. Do it.
Well, as someone who dances under overpasses, I have a special interest in the Mavericks this year because a certain new metal relegated team has the rights to the Mavs pick. And when that went down...
Sounds like you could fix the Mavs, but you're not willing to fix the Mavs.
Hey, I plead the fifth, man. I am not a Mavs fixer day one here. But through the Porzingis trade, the Knicks got that pick. I don't think Mills has a long view of in any room. But sometimes stuff works out. And like when that pick happened, that pick transfer happened, I was pleased because it was unprotected, and there's a chance that Porzingis could have gotten hurt. You know how I feel about Porzingis. There's a chance that I love him, but he's a tough one to for sustainability. And it has not only has that trade yet to bear fruit for the Mavs, they made all these micro moves like dealing Josh Richardson. Taking on Josh Richardson for Seth Curry, which like on paper is fine. I like Josh Richardson, but it really hurt their shooting. And I was watching their game yesterday, and Porzingis doesn't have like the lateral quickness he maybe had for a split second in New York. And Kleber isn't much of a outlier or defender. He just kind of is like a regular shooter. And the Warriors were just demolishing them on simple screen and rolls, man. Like, just open dunks for Draymond Green and open shots for Kelly Oubre, who dropped 40, I think. There was no defense, and it reminded me of a team full of Amari Stoudemire's who were so frustrated, who wanted to, like, put in all the effort, but they didn't have an access to any result. They were just standing in the wrong place. Luka was just, like, kind of lost, man, on defense. And if a team has a good shooting night, like Oubre, I believe, sank 7 threes last night, the team is just cooked because they have to rely on the other team missing shots.
Just for the Knicks fans out there, like yourself, if the season ended today, which it is not, that pick would be just
sixth odds,
best, which is obviously a very valuable pick and not one that anyone other than Steve Mills, the man with the longest view in the room, knew when this trade happened.
And it's a 5-player draft too, so that's very
to the point you were making before. Of course, Mills didn't anticipate the Mavericks being bad. You just are taking the picks from the team you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. Like, he couldn't have gotten a different team's picks in that deal because he was dealing with the Mavericks.
Yeah, just give me
That's
your
how
picks.
it works.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So it's turned out thus far fortuitously. Looking at the Mavs, their defense is a little bit worse than last year, but they weren't good to begin with on that side of the ball. I know acquiring Jay Rich was supposed to solve some of their perimeter defense problems. Getting James Johnson was supposed to do the same, add some
enforcement,
some garden punching in the mix. Thus far, defense has been a little bit worse than last season. But offensively, that's been the huge drop. They went from, as I said, being the best in NBA history, 116.7 offensive rating last year, to right now 110.3. I mean, just a precipitous decline. And, it's just shooting. You just look at it. It's just shooting. Not only losing Curry, because Curry was one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, and just swapping him out for Jay Rich, who is not a particularly accurate three-point shooter. He's okay. But overall, everyone just happens to be kind of shooting even below expectation. Luka's not a great shooter, but he's shooting especially shitty, and he takes a lot of hard shots, which even drop his three-point shooting down further. Porzingis, below average from what you'd expect. Dorian Finney-Smith, not that great. James Johnson, shooting horribly. Like, you just add all those guys into the mix, they're the ones taking the bulk majority of your threes besides, say, Tim Hardaway Jr. They're just dragging down their overall numbers. They're worst in the NBA in three-point field goal percentage, and you're just seeing how that is tearing apart their offensive efficiency. So, with all the criticism of Luka, I think he's been great. I think he's been just as good as last season. He's even assisting more. His efficiency is down a bit because he's getting to the line less. I think that's a bigger concern than his three-point shooting dipping below 30%. Like, that's bad. But it was already bad. It was already like 31, 32%. It was already kind of shit.
Yeah.
But he's a young player who, commands the attention that he does. To see them dip by a substantial amount in the percentage of times they go to the line, that's more concerning to me than his three-point shooting.
100%. I agree with that. And I want to talk more about shooting in a second, but I think another problem the Mavs have is a player like Kristaps Porzingis is a unique situation, right? Because he's tantalizing. He is the unicorn, even though it's a prototype. There's always a handful of players that kind of fit in that box. I think of Rasheed Wallace. I think of Nikola Jokic. I think of Ben Simmons. Just players. I mean, not in that specific. Maybe Simmons doesn't qualify for that specific kind of unicorn. But there are stretch fives who could do a multiple of outlier things on the court, like protect the rim and all that stuff. And he's a tantalizing player. The way he looks, he walks on the court, and you're like, is he going to be the greatest player of all time? Because I swear, last night, for 5 minutes where he couldn't miss, I was like, this guy, I've never seen anything like this, even though I have. It kind of tricks your brain. And the point I'm getting to in a roundabout way is we're going to be waiting for this forever. And you take Kristaps Porzingis in a heartbeat. You give him max money in a heartbeat. And then you let him play and you deal with all the noise as it comes because he is worth every penny of that value. And you'll be waiting forever because this might be just what he is. And I think the Mavs are stuck in purgatory even with him because I don't think his ceiling is much higher than this in actuality. In our imaginations, it's sky high. And I don't think a team like the Mavs have any choice but to wait for him to get better. And that waiting is going to cost them years.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I've always been a fan of KP's game. You know, having a guy at 7'2", 7'3", who can shoot with the range and the accuracy that he can is just so rare. Also, to couple that with his ability to catch lobs in a pick and roll, where you could kind of use him as a Ryan Anderson and a Clint Capella. You know, you have such diversity, and both are really effective as a pick and roll option.
He has an isolation game.
I mean, I don't like that from him because it just means he takes mid-range jumpers. But
Sure.
yes, that's theoretically an appeal of him as well. And then he can block shots. He's a great rim protector. You can have him around the rim and dissuade teams from scoring there. So
It's a good free throw shooter.
As a modern five, he is incredibly alluring as a component because for the same reason the Mavericks wanted him. You're like, you just put him at the five. He shakes threes, he catches lobs, he protects the rim, like plug and play, easy peasy. But then you look at their on-off numbers, and granted, this is through a quarter of the season. You know, they're extremely noisy, and he's been hurt some. But you look at Luka, he's a +5. Well, they're pretty good with him on the court. Like, that's a good team when Luka's playing. But then you go across the board, and you see, like, with Josh Richardson, -2. James Johnson, -5.7. With Trey Burke, -3.8. Willie Cauley-Stein, +12.6. Interesting. So they can get good minutes out of, a traditional big man on the court. And then you get to KP, and it's -8. The worst on the team out of anybody who plays real minutes. And you're like, why? Why is that happening? When KP is on the court, they have sucked. But while Luka is on the court, they are good. Like, how is this happening, and how can these be your two main guys?
I mean, I felt like it was a problem in New York too, and when KP is the valve, right? Like Luka can do everything, but he creates looks for players like KP, and when KP kind of is off, and this comes down to shooting, right? So we spent this last 10 years, maybe longer, trying to identify outlier skills that create wins, deflections, screens, points per screen, players' gravity, all these roundabout ways, these nerdy, dorky ways to talk about the game and how these actions influence results. And then it's 2021, and after all that, I'm like, yeah, but did you make the shot? Did it go in? Because if it doesn't go in, those things kind of have a diminished value because all these shots are going in. And if KP is offering all these things, but his shots aren't dropping, then you're going to lose games.
Right, and some of it is exactly that, right? When you have two guys on the court who are shooting poorly, it's worse than having one guy on the court who's shooting poorly.
Yeah, totally.
Like, it's just that simple.
If Jay Rich isn't hitting his shots, they're going to lose.
When Luka and KP are on the court together, these numbers are via cleaning the glass. The Mavericks are a -2. When Luka's on the court without Kristaps Porzingis, their numbers are a -2.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Good luck. Figure that out.
Is there a new net zero on the scene? And they should play Porzingis if he feels well. They should play him every minute that he wants to play.
I think we could very well see a month-long span where all these guys, Jay Rich, Porzingis, Dorian Finney-Smith, James Johnson, catch fire,
Yeah.
and they just have an offense that just blows people off the court, and then their numbers normalize a little bit, and they go back to being like a pretty good team, but not a contender, and we stop talking about the Mavs.
And, I'm obsessed with NBA purgatory and like which free agents and players are available and the inventory of all these things. But can I do a little multiverse thing here? Mm-hmm. And let's say Giannis Antetokounmpo signs with Dallas. And so you have the big three, right? Porzingis, Giannis, and Luka. I think that team is suspect a little bit.
I love that team.
I mean, it's very good and it has potential to go to the finals, but it doesn't really solve what we're talking about. If Giannis stays the same player, Giannis is changing. He hasn't shot a 3 in 2 days. If Giannis turns into Shaq, that team is devastating. If Giannis wants to do his dribbly like pull up jumper thing, okay. Like I still think the Clippers don't really have a problem with them. I think the Lakers don't have a problem, etc. Whatever. I still think they're in purgatory if you add Giannis to that team.
Part of this comes down to a player like Luka, and can he play with others?
Oh, interesting. This is a LeBron conversation, kind of.
When you have a player who demands that many touches, who does that much creating, passing and scoring, that much burden on one guy, they really have to be able to score really well. Or someone else on the team has to be able to score really well too, right?
Yep.
Because like Harden can do that, LeBron can do that, and part of what makes them so great is that they can be that distributive player that creates shots for their teammates, that allows you to put players who are not that skilled on the floor with them, and to be 3-and-D threats or rim protectors or spot up shooters or whatever. You can put Kyle Korver on the floor next to someone like LeBron and get away with it because he doesn't have to do shit.
James Jones, Tristan Thompson, Delonte West. Yeah.
But can you have a guy like Porzingis shooting as much as he does and commandeering that many possessions while scoring at a league average rate? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you take the ball out of his hands and you added like a Bradley Beal, just as an example, that was someone that I believe Shaq and the TNT guys brought up. Like, oh, they could get a Bradley Beal to go next to him. I don't even know how this would occur, but theoretically, how would that make them better? I'm like, I don't know. Because when the ball's not in Luka's hands and he turns into a spot-up shooter as someone else cooks, that diminishes his value. Mm-hmm. So it's like these guys who are high usage, really like the nuclear reactor of an offense, they do have an oversized effect on how good your offense is. Like, it's a one-man show in Dallas, and Luka is not shooting well. I don't know. He's just not scoring that well.
And there's a 100% chance, I think, Mark Cuban understands this, right, and sees it. But when you're Dallas and you just take what's available to you. It's just like, all right, just add KP because he's available, and we can trick a team into giving us a good player. We couldn't trick Giannis into coming to that tax heaven.
I mean, but
Texas.
This is why I think it's kind of not a big deal. Because do you believe in Luka or not? If you're Dallas and you say, hey, man, the kid is shooting like shit, he'll get better. Mm-hmm. He'll get, last year was not a fluke. His efficiency didn't drop because of something that we're worried about long term. He's not a great shooter. We think he can get better. Let's try to work on him getting back to the foul line a few more times. Right. But overall, no, we're comfortable. He has piloted the NBA's best offense for a full season. We're just deeply unconcerned. And to me, that would be my approach.
With Luka, you mean, or the team? Because
with Luka, yeah.
Oh, Luka is... No, he is... I in the beginning of the season, I wanted the take that Paul George would have a better season than Luka to be true. And Paul George is having an insane great season.
It's not true.
I think Luka's having a better year. Luka's just a really great player, I think. Shout out to Paul George. We're talking about top 5 both
I mean,
these guys.
Paul
being top
George
five.
is so much more efficient this season, and he's a much, much better defender. So, like, there is a very good argument that Paul George has been better than Luka this year.
You know, I love
Obviously-
it. Yeah.
Obviously, Luka is a phenomenal passer. He's averaging, 9 assists a game.
Yeah.
Paul George is not that kind of player.
Yeah, Luka's averaging those assists and those rebounds are really helping his accumulative numbers or the vague numbers like BPM and stuff. But anyway,
Yeah, like you kind of can't convince me that he's actually a better rebounder than Paul George. Like I actually just
No.
don't. I just don't believe it. I'm like,
Yeah.
no. If you put Paul George
Yeah.
at like the 4 in that Dallas lineup, he would average exactly the same amount of rebounds.
But seasons are what they are. It's when I mention this, a lot of people would say like, but when Paul George is 23, I'm like, just saying in the snapshot of this season, of course Paul George is a better rebounder, but he's not rebounding better, so whatever. I would definitely have a tough time picking between Paul George and Luka Doncic. Speaking of picking, did you hear Reggie Miller last night on TV with his Jordan versus LeBron take?
No, I did not.
He said in a pickup game, if he was in a pickup game and he had to choose between one of those two players, he would take LeBron James in a second. I think he used the terms like shirts and skins. If I was in a situation like that, I would take LeBron. But if I was in the stands and
Well, are
wanted
you
entertainment,
shirts or are you skins?
judging by Reggie Miller's sun tattoo near his belly button, I think he would definitely want to be skins.
Does your pick change on whether you're playing shirtless or not?
Because LeBron is so yoked and Jordan has that weird alien tattoo on his back.
That's what I mean. Like LeBron's yokeness. You're like, well, we're skins. Oh, I'm taking LeBron. Like I can't play against that guy.
Oh, we're shirts? We're taking MJ, baby. Okay, we got to the bottom of that.
Like Tim Duncan, like shirts, right? Okay, yeah, I'll take TD. He's great.
Luka Doncic shirts. Luka Doncic shirts. Carmelo Anthony, we're doing shirts.
Luka Doncic, and he's gonna wear the shirt when we go in the pool afterwards, right? Okay, yes, I'll take Luka over Paul George all day, every day.
Guys, you have the first pick and your skins. Jokic is standing right there. What do you do? Ooh, he's the best player on the planet.
Kelly Oubre is available. Look at those cool tats. He's like a human tapestry.
Can Drake ball?
Meanwhile, yeah, Jokic is over there like human gravy crypto in the flesh.
Listen, it's called the bro. It's like a man's ear.
I mean, to be fair, like sweaty, gross people's skins are a weapon.
Oh, I've seen that tactic. That's a dirty trick.
Yeah, you get out there in the court and someone's like, I'm going skins. You're like, motherfucker, come on. It's humid out.
So do you walk up? Do you roll up to the cage, kind of ripe? Are you a biohacker? You haven't showered for a week, maybe, and you roll up to the cage and just dominate just from odor.
There's definitely people you know who will show up at the court.
A little ripe.
They're very ripe. Very ripe. And you're
Yeah.
playing, you're like, God damn, my forearms are going to stink.
Back in the day,
They're posting up and you're like, oh, God, I got to get home and shower.
Back in the day, we used to play, and there used to be a guy that rolled up that was like definitely into the Grateful Dead, or definitely had tapestries. Definitely was
Human tapestries?
right. Definitely enjoyed some marijuana, and he rolled up to the court, and we were just like, "Yo, are you serious? All right." He was a really nice guy. I liked him so much, but he was tough to defend, man. It's got that pungent odor. He had dreadlocks too. I love that whole culture on the court. I was like, I kind of smell like a skunk, not a little stinker, but just an actual skunk.
You never want to be a little stinker.
You're just sitting at home hours after your pickup game, hours after showering, and I'm like, I smell dank, like that sticky, icky weed, man.
High off the contact.
Yeah, it happened, man.
Before we get out of here, we're talking about KP, kind of the unicorn that should have been. That he was in that category.
He might be, though. He might be.
Could be still young.
Yeah.
But he was in that category, right, with the future of the center position. And Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, and then Jokic has, obviously appeared, as you just mentioned, wearing his shirt. Always
Like
wearing
a
the
king,
shirt.
body positive, fashion positive.
But there's a lot of talk this season about potential MVPs, that MVP ladder. You've got Jokic and Embiid are both, top-notch candidates. I know LeBron is in the mix, as he always is.
Should be.
Anthony Davis is, they're a great team, and Kawhi Leonard's in the mix. But the one part that's unique about Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic is that they're big guys, and that we have not had a big man, a center, be MVP in a long time. There would be a year when you could go back and say it was this year, but I have not done that research. Just as a heads up.
I'm just guessing it's Hakeem Olajuwon or something.
Probably Shaq.
Shaq for sure. Yeah, it's probably Shaq. Has there been big man erasure? Has our need for... I mean, we had this most influential player debate last week, so not to rehash that, but I think what we want from an MVP is this grittiness, right? Luka is that player. Kind of reminds you of a ball dominant Jordan type. Gets really angry, dives for loose ball, all this stuff. Big men don't have the opportunity to dive for loose balls because the distance they have to travel is greater, and they don't offer any of the aesthetic qualities we're looking for in a heroic player, right? And I think it's about time we put some damn respect on those big boys' names.
I agree, and it's also that it's a specific kind of big guy we're talking about, because Giannis plays like a center. Giannis is a center for all purposes, and he's won it back-to-back. He's a big man. He can't shoot for shit. He's stopped, as certain influential podcasts have advocated for years. He has stopped shooting threes, and now basically just plays like Shaquille O'Neal.
Which is what he should do, and he's going to be amazing.
And we're like, the centers are back, baby! Unlike last season when 7-foot Giannis controlled the paint, and the last 2 years in a row. And then you can go back to Kevin Durant. Obviously a perimeter player, also 7 feet tall. LeBron James, hulking, and won 4 in 5 years. MVP, Dirk Nowitzki.
It's a center. MVP is an aesthetic award, right?
It really is. I'm looking back and no centers have won since Giannis, Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan.
And Jokic, you just called him a center. He's a point guard, baby.
Right? I just mean Kevin Garnett, 7 feet tall. Tim Duncan, really a center. Dirk Nowitzki, center.
Yeah. I immediately thought of Olajuwon because of that lumbering post-up kind of player.
Big men never win, or they always win. Big men always are named MVP.
Right. So I guess the better question is are we just giving this award for the story of the player, their ascension, like Russell Westbrook, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and aesthetics? Those two things are what makes MVPs, right?
Well, I think when we're talking about framing this season as the vengeance of the big man, the beef is back, baby, that it is an aesthetic conversation.
Yeah.
Because they are undeniably centers. Where Giannis, he's playing the 4.
Or deniably centers, right? Because I really don't consider Jokic a center, but he is.
I am with you on his role is that of a point guard. But he is undeniably a center in a traditional standpoint. He guards the other team's center, just like Embiid does. They are the closest man to the basket, thereby are defined as a center.
Got it.
But in some ways it is aesthetic because it's kind of about posting up.
Yes, right.
Right? I mean, I know, of course, Dirk posted up. Of course, KG posted up. Of course, Tim Duncan posted up. That's all he did. But we're still viewing them as not centers for whatever fucking reason. So yeah, this is it's a fragile argument to say that big men have not won MVP in a long time. Even to call it aesthetics is strange. And yet, I'm kind of down with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth figuring out.
Well, is it wrong? Yeah, it's total bullshit. But I'm kind of down to say centers are back.
Like I've been really personally trying to push this idea after watching Harden go to the Nets, the idea that successful teams, but then maybe awards in a way, should not be diversified. There doesn't have to be diversity in terms of stock portfolios, right? I'm really into this idea of like the smartest. After all this stonks talk and doggies running around, running around my laptop, I've been thinking about this, and all the smart people are like, there's a myth of diversity in stock portfolios, and do not take shots at 50 companies. Find 3 that you like, and just trust those 3 companies to do their thing. Just pick the right ones, and you're good. And I feel like I've been trying to apply that to basketball, obviously, and teams, but I almost want to apply that to this conversation here, because the MVP award shouldn't look like a tapestry of different players, right? It should just be the best player. And sometimes the best player is just versions of Kevin Durant.
Yeah, and also, I do like, at least with MVP, that you can be any kind of player as long as you score a bunch of points and your team is good. Mm-hmm. Like, scoring is obviously predominant here, but you could be Steph Curry, you could launch from 3, you could be KD, as you said, a perimeter scorer, you could be potentially Joel Embiid, you could be Tim Duncan. Right. There's a diversity there, I think, within that mix. Defensive Player of the Year is a little tougher. It just always goes to a big guy.
It always goes to a big guy, and it always is kind of a muted team award, right? It's on the low. It's about who is the best defender on the number 1 ranked defensive team.
Kawhi has won, but other than that, it's just big guys. Gary Payton won, and he was a total anomaly. Around him was all big guys as well. It's just always shot blockers and rebounders and guys in the paint. Yeah. Like, not fair. I think guys like, Smart should be in that mix.
Oh my God, Marcus Smart's awesome. It's
phenomenal defensive player, but like, he basically just doesn't have a chance to win that award because he's not a big guy.
And those players, and this was my defensive Clay years ago when he was not hurt, was players like Marcus Smart, and Smart's much better than Clay. But Clay had value as an on-ball defender, but didn't accrue enough stats. And this is whatever people have said this. This is not my thought, but it doesn't accrue enough rebounds or blocks or steals. He just like makes his man pass the ball, and that award has to have some metric tied to it, being like, you led the league in blocks, therefore you qualify for DPOY, right?
Yeah. Someone like Marcus Camby won Defensive Player of the Year.
I love him. I'm into that. Yeah.
Good player. I like him. But it was like, he blocks shots, he rebounds, he must be great on defense. Like, he's got to be.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Is he? Yeah, he's good.
But this goes back to our shooting thing, and I hate that cliche of like, is it a make or miss league? But after all this, if the ball goes down, that's just a metric. And if you accrue defensive stats, well, you just did it, right? Like, if you lead the league in steals like Ben Simmons last year, then you should be in that conversation.
I'm growing closer and closer to full statistical nihilism.
Oh, yes. Are you a Knicks fan now? I just have to check. Because when people say that stuff, I just need to check.
Just like, what are we doing with scoring, man? Everybody can fucking score. That's the NBA today. Like, scoring has never meant less. It's so meaningless. Jordan Clarkson averages 25 points per 36 minutes with a true shooting percentage of 61. Okay, so he's Steph Curry from his like MVP season or something. Like, you look at all these numbers: Paul George, Jaylen Brown, Joel Embiid has a true shooting percentage of near 70%. Not to get into just reading off the guys who've been phenomenally efficient thus far, but it's kind of a farce. I mean, like,
I enjoy it because this is like the best kind of basketball to watch, right? And like, there has been a surge in scoring, but like, now you just have to score, right? The Memphis Grizzlies, New York Knicks in the 90s thing, before basketball, the NBA started, was like a way to do it, but I'd much prefer this. And, we see good teams get beat because just one player on the other team got hot, right? We watched Kelly Oubre kind of just win the game for Golden State yesterday.
Well, I'm more thinking along the lines of, even a couple of years back, and this may change. Look, we're only a quarter into the season. We may get a huge normalization. And as we discussed, this might have something to do with the environment, not having fans, things like that. But even a few years back, the difference between a guy who was a good scorer and a superstar could really be viewed by creating their own shot and how good they were at it, right? Like, were you Carmelo Anthony, who's a really good scorer, but his efficiency topped out around league average? Like a valuable player, but not a real offensive difference maker.
When he stopped going to the free throw line, for sure.
Yeah, and someone like Curry or Durant or LeBron were different. Harden, because not only did they give you that volume, but they did it at a rate that was like exceptional.
Yep.
And in the last few years, we've seen that rate just kind of skyrocket. As I'm saying,
this is the effect, right?
Yeah, someone like Jordan Clarkson is scoring at a rate of like LeBron James did a few years back. And it's like, it's Jordan Clarkson. Maybe he's just hot. But you look at Kawhi or Embiid, they are just levels of efficiency beyond stars. And I think what makes this stick in my craw a little bit is not that I don't have a problem with it, but it's like we have to contextualize the god Allen Iverson.
Oh,
wow. when he led the league in scoring with a true shooting percentage of 50. 50. Yeah. That was league average. So when people say, "Oh, well, Iverson was inefficient," look at the era. Yeah. Because if we're not, we're saying Jordan Clarkson is better than Kobe Bryant or Iverson or any of these guys were in their prime. Mm-hmm. Jordan Clarkson is better than them. That's a fun conversation, sure.
Oh, well, I'm ready for it. Yeah.
But we just have to contextualize stuff. It's not even the same as 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, let alone 20.
I know. It's interesting because a player like Jaylen Brown has been scoring a ton. Mm-hmm. And, the BMM is just like, is he a superstar? And I'm like, no, because Jordan Clarkson is doing the same exact thing. And we're just seeing the trend of the league. Right, and
it reminds me of, a couple of years back when they got rid of, they stopped allowing defensive players to basically bump guys as they ran around on the court.
Oh, right.
And we saw this explosion that was also tied to the amount of threes going up, but in scoring just went crazy.
Yeah.
And you can't look at a guy scoring 27 points in 2021 as the same as a guy scoring 27 points in 2010 or 2004 or 1997. It's just it's the same game, different rules.
Yeah, and I think, with all these statistics that we have, and I think even the Knicks, every team is now looking at the right stuff. And we're seeing a moment in the NBA where I think teams are utilizing their personnel the correct way. Jordan Clarkson just score. And, what I mean is, if you look at a player like Thaddeus Young, who used to be a prom king, Harrison Barnes, the prototypical prom king, right? Scoring, not that efficient, doesn't do much else. They've changed their games. It's almost as if this is finally the effect of advanced analytics. It's not that we are all Draymond Greens. It's that the teams are pinpointing the strengths of personnel.
And yes, you're right. And it's an optimization that comes from experience. It comes from duplicating other teams' success. Mm-hmm. Comes from institutional knowledge, etc. And again, 20 years of learning about this stuff. Mm-hmm. So when guys like Shaq and Charles Barkley are griping about the state of the modern game, it's just guys shooting threes, I think there are real conversations to be had that give some respect to these, the large lads of the past. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think those are real conversations to be had about contextualizing the changes in the game. But when you just bitch about it, that makes a bad argument. It makes you sound sour instead of having a legit conversation about how things have changed. If you go back to the year 2000, here are the guys right at the top of the league, right? Shaquille O'Neal, 29-7. Allen Iverson, 28.4. Grant Hill, 25.8. Vince Carter, 25.7. Karl Malone, 25.5. That's it. Those are your guys above 25. And you look at this year, there's 15 guys who are roughly around there. Like, it's just different.
Yep.
And those guys back then, Iverson, Shaquille, they played 40-some minutes a game. They played 40-plus minutes a game.
Yeah.
Scoring was so much lower that, like, those are the conversations to be had. It's not that guys were tougher. It's not that they were Iron Men, and today's guys have been pussificationed by, like, millennials and,
nerds, whatever.
Nerds and dorks and participation awards and all the metrics that Chris Webber is always griping about. There are real conversations to be had about rule changes and how the game is played differently and how rosters were composed 20 years ago. Those are interesting to me. Those are valid. If they defend Allen Iverson, I'm on board.
Yeah.
Like, don't just say that today's guys suck.
Well, the Reggie Miller, LeBron James, Michael Jordan thing was kind of to that point. He was like, if I wanted to watch it, Michael Jordan, because he's a pretty player, man. 360 dunks. Let's go.
No, skins.
Skins. Right.
Okay, yeah.
No. Shirts.
Oh, he's shirts.
Shirts. Because you're not letting LeBron James wear a T-shirt.
No.
Forget that, man. No. But I think having ex-players analyze the game now on TNT, when it's a showcase. There's only a handful of games on Thursdays, and we get to spend time with these four guys, these three ex-players and Ernie. And they've been a part of this NBA discussion forever, but they're the ones who want to see Jordan in the crowd, right? Because they have to give themselves roses, give themselves the flowers, right? And of course they defend their era. Of course they do all this stuff. This is not shocking, but they're at a kind of a bypass too now this year, because I think Twitter has become stock woke, market woke, everything woke, and statistical kind of corners of NBA Twitter have kind of figured out a way not only to understand this, but to joke about it and just have it be a thing. So we're not arguing the legitimacy of these ideas. We're just applying them now. And these guys are at a crossroads because they're still talking about, like, Shaq is on a roll. He's just like, I could have taken him. We'll never know. Sure, I love it. Take shots. But he's just like, oh, back in my day, Jokic, whatever. Any good player is bad. And he has to do that, but you can't have it both ways, right? I mean, hypocrisy is stupid, but if you score a lot, they're not tough.
I'm fine with there being a population of the pundits who say today's players are soft. That's okay. It just shouldn't be the default because it's boring. Every time we watch a game and there's a flagrant foul, we don't need to have one of the two announcers go into their spiel about, back in my day. Like, shut up. I know you're just playing a song, to use Quo terminology. You're just playing a tune. You're getting out your little pan pipe.
Some Jethro Tull action. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just yeah.
What's up, Jethro? I see you.
Yeah, just aqua boogieing, yeah.
It's that pan flute season. Pan flute day ones, man.
But yeah, they're just playing a song because that's how you fill up the time. Oh, it looks like we got 2 minutes to kill. Time to gripe about today's softies, the tendies of today's NBA.
Yeah, and
why has no one just even given the argument that I just so eloquently put forth? Where is that? Someone could just say, hey, it's interesting to talk about that year 2000 and those players because back then power forwards and small forwards couldn't shoot. Mm-hmm. It was a different game.
Yeah.
How about that? How about instead of saying we were men and they are little girls? Like, where is just the real context? Why not say we didn't emphasize scoring or shooting, so like the lanes were packed? Why not just tell people that
our value metric was different? Right.
We had to walk the ball up the court.
Yeah.
Like, just explain.
Yeah.
Like, tell us how it was different instead of making it a moral conundrum.
Yeah. We we milked the shot clock. Every possession, we tried to take up as much time as possible. That was where we saw the value. And
We thought working for a better shot and giving up good shots in order to potentially improve one was smart. Turns out we were wrong.
Yeah. We thought we were playing the defense, but now they're playing location. Location dictates a good or bad shot, not your defender.
Yeah, like, again, I just feel like I don't think they're wrong. They should be defensive of their own era because time is not on their side.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They have a lot of voices in media,
Yeah.
but time is not on their side.
Yeah.
They should be explaining how guys like Kobe and Iverson were phenomenal. And don't let the efficiency dorks diminish them because in comparison to today's Jordan Clarksons, those guys were bricklayers. Because context matters.
But isn't this just a two-party system where some influential podcasts and other not influential podcasts, the world of the NBA narrative has shifted away from the idea of toughness. So you have to be like, well, all right, if you think 9/11 happened, then I just have to think it doesn't. And it's not that drastic or dark, but it's like if we're saying we don't value toughness anymore, we value things like skills and elegance, they have to be like, it's toughness.
Of course, I get the storytelling of it. But I'm also like, look, Charles Barkley, it's not about good or bad. Give us health care. You know?
Can Ernie Johnson just give me my $2,000 check? Can we get it?
Ernie Johnson, that's going to be a no from Ernie, dog.
That's a hard no.
He's got some write-in votes. But yeah, no, I'm intentionally drawing a comparison that, today's guys versus yesterday's guys, it's always framed in good or bad. It's framed in morality. Give us stuff. Explain how the game was different. Give us some information. Let us contextualize it in a more accurate way. You were there.
Yeah. Right. I mean, in a way, I don't want them to do it because it's nice to have our little discussions around it.
So you can go to Cookies, subscribe on Patreon, and get the truth.
Right.
From the only place it's giving it to. Yeah. I know.
Yeah, and
Great to have.
I always thought that was the good part of Chris Webber. Like even though his language was clumsy at times, the interest I had in him calling a game was the first person point of view. And he had gone through so much as a player. And there's so much baggage with every thought he has because of what happened to him in college and the pros that I'm like, I find this to be really interesting, even though he's not laying down bars. He's not in the cipher ever. He's kind of just practicing with his notepad on Stretch and Bobbito, which is definitely not ethical for hip hop heads like Tyler Johnson and Fred VanVleet. Was that point clear enough?
Yeah. I think we're gonna end on that. Actually, that was perfect. That's the perfect pod. You nailed it. I don't really have anything to even offer.
Just VanVleet crushing it in the cipher.
Cookies.